Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is the Conversations with God Book 4 discussion group. And I am Nanette Kennedy with Humanities Team and the Evolution Revolution. And this Conversations with God Book 4 is by Neil Donald Walsh. Here's the book. There we go. And last week, we were talking about things we could do that wouldn't be that difficult to spread good news. Now, because it's been raining for the last 2 days, I can't write on my rear window. But here are some window markers that I just got at my grocery store, and they're made by Crayola. And for my kindness quote, which I was going to use, see if I can find it real quick. Of course, nothing happens real quick. There we go. I will find it, I promise. Come on. I had it all queued up. Oh, it's by Seneca. Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. And that's what I was going to put on my rear window. But that'll have to wait. It's supposed to rain a couple more days, and we'll take it from there. But anyway, does anybody have any comments or questions before we get started?
I want to know, did you get the window markers with crystal effects or just the regular window markers? They have the one with crystal effects as an add-on for $3.97 in Amazon.
Well, no, you got me on that one. So
how fun.
It is fun. And like I said last week, it's really a good way to keep kindness going around, and thoughtfulness and peace and all that stuff.
I put it on my for my cover. I put "A Warm Smile is the Universal Language of Kindness" by William Arthur Ward on my Facebook page as a cover.
Good.
I don't have a car. I don't have a car yet, and I don't have a bike either. So it's the best I could do because everyone will see it.
Excellent. Shows that you're thinking outside the car. So, okay. I almost called on Angela, who I know is not here. Linda, would you like to go ahead and start reading?
Sure. Okay, this is chapter 8. It starts with Neil speaking. Okay, this is getting very interesting. And I have to say, I totally get that highly evolved beings could be watching over us. There have been enough UFO sightings over these past years to... Past years? You mean these past centuries? Okay, these past centuries, to make it, one would think, incontrovertible that we're being observed. But helped? Stopped from hurting ourselves? How? Now all of a sudden there. How is that done? Planting ideas in our heads from afar? Okay, I can maybe even accept that. I can hold even that as a possibility. But actually visiting us? We're getting into some pretty way out territory here. Talk about a play on words. And I didn't do that deliberately any more than you did. But I have to say, I never thought my conversation with God would carry me here. I never thought I'd get to this. Remember when you said that we spent a significant portion of Conversations with God, Book 3, talking about highly evolved beings? Yes, but not about them choosing to help us. No, but about the fact that they exist for sure. Well, hypothetical existence and here and now assistance, including visiting us, are two very different things. Dramatically different things. Yeah, agreed. Embracing this possibility is all part of the third invitation. I thought the invitation was to awaken our species, not to be introduced to a new species. Are you now saying that to awaken the species, I have to embrace a belief in other life forms? I guess most people would not call them Hebes, as we referred to highly evolved beings in Book 3, but would just call them extraterrestrials. Are you saying that I have to embrace a belief that extraterrestrials, let's just continue to call them highly evolved beings, or Hebes for short, but that an awakened species is choosing to help us and is visiting us? Well, you don't have to embrace anything. You can move forward with your mission to awaken your species without adopting any belief that another species exists, much less the idea that there are highly evolved beings choosing to help those on Earth. But you just said embracing this is all part of the third invitation. It's a part of the invitation. It's not required to accept the invitation. Okay, would you unpack that for me? Look, let's go back to the front door analogy. If you knock on my door and I open it and invite you in, and if I say, how timely, I've just put out some hors d'oeuvres, that doesn't mean you may not accept the invitation unless you consume the specialty items on the tray. Got it. I can come to the party without having to swallow what may not be to my cup of tea, to mix metaphors. You can indeed. I can accept the invitation to help awaken our species without having to believe that other species are choosing to help us and are visiting us. Yes, one decision does not hinge on the other. Well, that feels better. That feels like I've got a little more freedom here. Well, freedom is something you always have. That's my promise to you. That is my eternal commitment. I know, and I thank you. You've said that over and over, and I'm accepting that that's your greatest gift to us. So now let's say that I'm at least willing to explore these ideas that you've brought into our conversation as a possibility. Let's say I'm willing to explore them as a possibility. What I really want to get to here is how I can help in awakening our species and what an awakened humanity would look like. How would it create and experience life? I described that in detail, in great detail, in what you have called Book 3 of your conversation with me. Yes, you did, and I'd love to have a look at that again. I've already forgotten most of what you said. It's amazing to me how we forget what would really be valuable for us to remember. Yes, that is part of the human experience for sure. But repetition can help with that. So we're going to summarize much of that again here, as well as repeating a few salient points from several of our other past conversations. Okay by me. I can use the brush up for sure. But right now, I can't ignore the elephant in the room. I can't just pretend that you didn't just say what you've just said right here. In conversing, hang on a second. I'm really having a hard time with my Kindle for a second. Hang on. Okay. I apologize. I really don't know what happened here. Hang on a second. Okay, here I am. Okay. You didn't just say that highly evolved beings exist in the universe. You said that they are choosing to offer help with us directly, and that they are even visiting us. As I observed earlier, those are two dramatically different pieces of information. We can explore both. The second exploration will serve the first. It would be beneficial for many facets of life to be explored by you during this wonderful moment in the evolution of your species, with nothing assumed and nothing eliminated from conversation. Always keep your mind open. In all things, always keep your mind open. Everything is possible, especially things you know nothing about. You wouldn't decide that something you know nothing about is impossible, would you? Well, many human beings manage to do that much of the time. But you, and others like you, have been different. You've kept an open mind. You're sitting here right now, engaged in what many others would call, an impossibility, a delusion, even a blasphemy. You're having a conversation with God, and you're thinking nothing of it. Well, why should I? It was you who told me in prior conversations, speaking of our previous exchanges, to at least consider the possibility that there may be something I don't fully understand about life and God, the understanding of which would change everything. So I've applied that to my experience. I'm very clear now that all of us are totally capable of accessing the highest source of wisdom within us, which I call God, when we need to or wish to. We've all been doing it for years. Since we were born, everybody is having a conversation with God all the time. Just many don't know it, or they call it something else. That is at least my understanding, my observation, and my experience. So you can accept God. You can accept that God is communicating with you, but you're not so sure about highly evolved beings helping you? Good one. Good point. I guess the second idea seems a little more science fiction-esque than the first. So it's one step removed from something that I can easily and non-hesitatingly accept. I mean, even organized religion speaks of revelations, moments of wonderful clarity, insights presumably coming from God. But I don't hear much talk from pulpits about highly evolved beings offering us guidance. So it's a startling idea, and not one that's easy to step into without the slightest hesitation. Yet you'll find this is as well in that part of our previous dialogue that you called Book 3. Really? I've forgotten about that. There I said, when all your race are led to mastery and achieve it, then your race as a whole, for your race is a whole, will move easily through time and space. You will have mastered the laws of physics as you understood them, and you will seek to assist those belonging to other races and other civilizations in coming to mastery as well. And you replied, even as those of other races and other civilizations are doing so now with us, to which I answered exactly, precisely. So it shouldn't be a surprise to see this come up again in our present exchange. You know, I'd actually forgotten that you'd said that before. My messages to you have been consistent through the years. What has not been consistent is your remembrance of them. Chapter 9. I'll be the first to acknowledge that remembering all that I know and all the messages I've received from all the wonderful sources of wisdom in my life has not been my high card, not my most highly developed attribute. It is with me, as my father used to say, so old, so soon, so smart, so late. That said, I want to offer whatever energy I can to the global effort to awaken our species. So I'm very happy to have been stimulated to enter this present conversation. But you know what? I like to think that I've added to that global effort already in my life. Many people have, just by the way they interact with others. So maybe I don't have to accept the third invitation. Maybe I already did long ago. Many of you have done, yes, some of the things that a person who has received and accepted and acted on this invitation might do. But most of you have not done so intentionally. You've all done them graciously and generously and genuinely, but not with a specific intention behind them. And intention is everything. It sets the energetic signature for events that follow. You can get in your car and drive down the road and be doing everything that a good driver would do. But if you haven't set your intention about where you're going, you'll find yourself getting nowhere. I've had that experience. But now, if you're saying that from this day forward, your intention in everything you think, say, and do is to awaken your species, all as a part of self-expression that moves you forward on your own evolutionary journey, then you're going to see a different level outcome. This is what the third invitation is all about. And it is extended to everyone, not just you. The conversation we're having now is for everyone who accidentally finds their way to it. You know who you are, because here you are. The awakening of others will not happen by chance, or as a nice but not specifically focused on result, but as an intended effect of the personal evolution of all those who self-select to accept the invitation that has been extended here. A part of how you will all do this is by allowing your personal growth and your struggles to achieve it to be on display, to be modeled publicly. Oh, that's a big one. That's a huge thing to even contemplate. Hang on, I need to clear my throat. Yes, yet, should you agree within to do it, you will have expanded the evolutionary impact of your day-to-day journey and moment-to-moment choices, from little you to big you, from local you to universal you, from singular you to collective you. By all of you allowing your personal evolutionary process to be observed by others, it can become a means by which evolutionary process of all humanity is advanced. And what a perfect time for advancement this is. But how could anyone even attempt to do this kind of thing without being tempted to feel grandiose? I wouldn't want to start deluding myself into thinking that I'm the hope for our species. And I wouldn't want to inadvertently take anyone else down that road either. Wouldn't I run the risk here of inadvertently placing myself into an artificially elevated mental state where I could only be described as manic or even deranged, thinking that I have this mission placed before me and I am one of those who's going to carry it out? Let's be clear. This is not about walking around declaring yourself to be the model of perfection and the example of evolutionary excellence. This is about simply not hiding your personal choices, but presenting yourself authentically to the world with regard to both your struggles and your progress as you seek to fully awaken. If you really genuinely and humbly notice within your personal and interior process is not focused on anyone else, and certainly not on saving the world, but is only intended to move forward as best you can, your own individual and personal evolution. And if you quietly share this with anyone who asks you about your change of behavior, because others will notice, you will not take yourself to the place you've described. And if you really genuinely and humbly accept what you have called your own so-called imperfections, I see you as perfect just as you are, but we'll discuss that later. And you view yourself and declare yourself to be a person whose evolution is in progress and not anywhere near complete, you will also avoid the place you've described. If you are clear that the purpose of your decision is to accept the invitation to help awaken your species, is not to set you up as some sort of leader, but to simply and humbly share that it is you who have been led by deep guidance from within, and now see that there is another way to be human, a way that humbly seeks to be more beneficial to yourself and others. You will never self-aggrandize. Well, I certainly have enough imperfections to stop myself from imagining that I'm some sort of spiritual leader. And anyone who knows me will tell you that. If you remain clear about that, you have nothing to worry about. On the other hand, what I don't want to do, and what I don't want anyone else to do, is to start to feel so bad about ourselves, so imperfect, so unevolved, that we don't see ourselves worthy of even trying to awaken, much less accept that we are awake, to say nothing of helping to awaken others. If you allow yourself to see what you and others would call imperfections as part of what's perfect about all of you, and, by the way, see everyone else's imperfections in the same way, you will create a wonderful balance that will serve you and everyone else whose life you touch. That balance will allow all of you to accept the third invitation to love yourselves just as you are, even as you humbly and genuinely seek to grow and further evolve every day. It will allow you also to give others permission to do the same. You are a beautiful being, growing and evolving, as I've said many times before in our conversations. If you saw you as God sees you, you would smile a lot. I am so comforted every time I hear that. Thank you for saying it to me again. You're welcome. Now, what I'd really like to do is take that close-up glance at what living as an awakened species would look like, and how humans can create and experience life in a new way on Earth. I want to go over again what you said in our previous conversations about how advanced beings from outer space live. I'll be happy to do that, but first, you must understand that I am not talking about beings from outer space as you have defined it. What do you mean, as I have defined it? Outer space is outer space. It's the part of the cosmos that exists off this planet. It's the rest of the universe. That's how I define it. How do you define it? Well, I'm going to quote your metaphysical master, William Shakespeare, here. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Which means that there are more things in what you call outer space than are dreamt of in your cosmology. When you refer to beings from outer space, you are referring to that part of the universe of which you are aware. Yet the universe is much larger and far more interdimensional than you may think. Entities from the limited aspect of all that exists that you call outer space are currently manifesting as physical entities just as you are. And just like humans, not all beings from outer space are peaceful, as I have already noted. Some are, and some are not. Even those who are peaceful, nevertheless, occasionally behave violently, just as humans who see themselves as peaceful sometimes behave violently. Well, to put it mildly, many humans kill other humans. Exactly. So when I refer to beings who are choosing to help you, and when I describe the new way humanity should choose to live, based on how this awakening species lives, I'm referring to entities who are not from the celestial realm in which beings experience themselves as only or primarily physical. Okay, now you've got my attention. I'm referring to life forms existing in other dimensions. A dimension where entities are not physical? A dimension where they need not be. A dimension where they can be, if they wish to be, if they choose to take on what you would call a physical form, but where doing so is not required for them to have the experience for which all of life was created.
Let's pause there for a second.
Yeah.
Does anybody have comments or questions?
I have a comment. So I don't know how many people on the call tuned in to Ken Stone's weekend event that he had last weekend. But something happened in that resonance experiment that is a beautiful example of what God was talking about here. Because Ken, it was a 3-session experiment. The first session was a video. The second session was a live experience on Saturday morning. And then the third session was a live experience on Sunday morning. And one of the things that Ken had done was he had said multiple times, if you can only come to one session, come to the Sunday session. I think it was the integrate session. So I tuned into the Sunday session, and he starts this meditation. He takes us, down, sinks us in. We got our eyes closed, we're breathing, and then all of a sudden he goes, okay, now, just open your eyes and go to this website and blah, blah, blah. And he started pitching this class that he's going to teach. And it was so out of resonance. I mean, and the thing was called Resonant Experiment. It was so out of resonance, I ended up hanging up. I didn't need to know about the class because I've already taken the exact same class. But what ended up happening, the fallout that he experienced, but he said within minutes, half the people that were on the call dropped. And right after I do book club, I do a Heal the Healer workshop on Zoom. And one of the folks that had been in his call on Sunday had tuned in, and she was talking about it, how she felt just like betrayed when he went into this sales pitch. And what happened was he had hired an extremely expensive and very famous marketing person who had told him to do it that way. And as he was doing it, he discovered he felt out of resonance. He felt out of integrity. So to fix it, what he did was he addressed that. He said, we're going to come back. I'm going to come back tonight, and I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it the way I wanted to do it. And he did. And you can't find the recording now of that Sunday morning session. He took it down and he got rid of it because he said, I gave up my power. I listened to somebody else, and I made a mistake, and I shouldn't have done that. And then he saved the pitch, I think, until the Q&A call. And so I just thought it was, I feel like it's exactly the kind of thing that God was talking about here by being authentic, allowing people to see the struggle that we have in this awakening process. being authentic and sharing with others when we see that we've made a mistake. It's how other people can learn, and it's how other people can feel safe in making their own mistakes. So I just wanted to share that.
That's very interesting. Given that I work tirelessly for Humanities Team, and I do a lot of the writing, and I feel like a lot of these people that are doing seminars and classes and whatnot, there's this belief out there by marketers that your sales page needs to be like 18 miles long. And I question myself whether it's because I work in the field, but I don't think it's just that. I would never read 26 pages of sales copy. I wouldn't do it. And so one of the things we are always discussing at Humanities Team is, really less is better. It doesn't mean you have to be so brief that people are going, I have no idea what you're talking about. But it doesn't need to be so repetitive. And I continually bring up how many political things I get in my email, and they're not long. They're 2 or 3 paragraphs. They say what they say, they give you the call to action, and then you either do or you don't. It's like, so I feel like what Ken did was he probably got into this thing with what the marketers were saying. And what we have to do is say, well, what feels good to us? And what do we want our audience to know? What do we want to tell them? And it's a real fine balance. And I think if we're out there through our behavior trying to awaken the species, if we come out with some long-winded pitch, as it were, we're going to turn people off. I think there's much briefer ways, and I think part of that way is listening to the person you're speaking to. Let them say what they want to say back, and not just you be the only ones talking. And I love that line where God says, you'd have such a big smile if you knew how much God loves you just as you are. And I think that's such an important jumping off point for this conversation, because so many of us grew up with guilt and shame. And we don't want to put anybody in that position, because then that exalts us instead of helping to lift up the other. So I'm really glad you brought that up, Linda.
Well, and what's interesting is that I think he's going to have more people enroll because of how he reacted than he would have otherwise. Like, if that hadn't happened, he would have gotten, some people would have signed up for the class. But by watching him and process his mistakes, basically, because really it's like fifth dimensional marketing, we don't know what that is. Nobody knows. Nobody's doing fifth dimensional marketing. This is just still old 20th century models of marketing. We don't have a 21st century model of marketing, because in the 21st century, as energetic beings, we probably don't need marketing as such. We allow the energy to draw. You present, and energetically people are going to find you. It's a whole new world that we're moving into, and he's trying to make that bridge, and yet still using these old tools. And he got caught by it. And it was just, to me, it was just such a beautiful example of the pain of the transition from, some people are calling it 3D to 5D. I call it, 20th century, 21st century. But, monetized marketing versus heart-based marketing, we're not there yet. We don't even know what it looks like. But we saw an inkling of what not to do now through his process. And I thought it was beautiful. Yeah, and the sales page, I mean, you're right. Sales page, it's like, oh my God. It was, I don't know, 26 pages. It was a lot of stuff. It's like, you don't need all that.
I agree.
Really.
And I think too that having thought-provoking questions, making your point through story and experience, and I'm not talking about that you've got the experience of being the highly evolved being, but you may have an experience that will say, so sometimes I know I'm kind of on that path because I don't have it all figured out, and I'll be the last person to ever say that I've got it all figured out. And as Neil or God, my dog is barking, sorry about that. I know that I just know that I know, like, my little teeny tiny fingernail tip is how much I know of what's in this universe. And once we start acting like we've got all the answers, which any of us who have kids know that when our kids are getting ready to graduate or go into their first year of college, they suddenly think they've figured it all out. And for my older son's high school graduation, I bought him a blank book and I wrote in the book, and I said, hurry, write down everything you know, because in 3 years, you're going to forget you used to know everything. And you can refer back to this. And he didn't find it so funny. But it was just kind of a comment on, honey, you know a great deal. You're smart. You're intelligent. But you've barely scratched the surface. So, and I think that's how we need to act when we're in conversations with each other, with other people, is that admitting, like Ken Stone admitted that he'd made a mistake, just admit right up front, I am not Jesus walking on water. I am never going to tell you I've got it all figured out, because I don't. And if I did, this would be really boring. I still want to be surprised. So anyway, anybody else?
Yeah, I want to say something. Last week, I was having a conversation with somebody that I was told I would do this book group every week, and ever since I look forward to it very much. And when I said I have conversations with God, she said, only God speaks through prophets, not you. That means you're crazy if you have conversations with God. What do you guys think about that?
Somebody else want to take a stab at that? Yeah, I've got some ideas about it. I just wondered if anybody else wanted to say anything.
Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yep,
I guess.
yep,
Okay.
Yep.
Sure. Well, that's even mentioned in conversations, right? That the old style, the traditional religious focuses said everything she is ever going to say to us, and it's all written down in my book, and if you believe it and follow it exactly the way it is, you'll be saved and you won't be punished to eternal damnation. I mean, they're so programmed to that stuff. And yet the reality is as conversation says, and as you, Kirsten, from your own experience know, and everybody here listening knows, God does talk to us all the time in every way possible.
It's just if you listen, and I wasn't listening for years, now I'm listening. I've been listening since I've been involved in Evo Revo.
And that's exactly perfect. Yeah.
Now, and that's what I tried to say. And then she said, that's crazy thinking. That's crazy making. I said, well, that's your opinion, but it's certainly not mine. But this woman was very sophisticated. She wasn't a zealot, a religious zealot, nothing like that. She wasn't, I don't know what her religion was, because I wanted to ask her, but I guess it didn't matter. But I just said, that's your opinion, and I don't agree. And so we kind of left it at that, which didn't attack her, she didn't attack me, but it was just kind of a strange, conversation, interaction. Like she didn't believe in that at all, because I also say I'm God 21, because God speaks through 21 as me because of my birthday. And I've done that, a few times. And I guess people think I'm trying not to post stuff anymore because that is crazy, but,
Well, you know where your boundaries are for sounding like you've jumped off the deep end. And many of us might be accused of doing that because of the books we're reading.
Mm-hmm.
But I do really believe that, and I can't remember who said this, and I don't think it was Neil. I think I read it in some other book. And it might even be a philosopher from a long time ago. Who do you think is the thought behind the thought?
Right.
And if that isn't the divine, the universe, God, life, I don't know what would be.
Yeah.
Because I've stopped and thought about that. It's like, okay, I'm having this really great idea, but who's talking behind that thought?
Mm-hmm.
And we're of God. And luckily, I was raised with parents who would put their hands on my heart and say, God is in your heart.
Right. And that's why I said that a little bit to her. I said, God is within everyone. It's just when you listen. If you don't listen, when you get in touch with yourself, meditate and so forth, you can talk to God anytime you want to. I've learned how to do that through a simple meditation. But it's when I'm driving my car, when I was walking on the street, I still have these conversations, and I guess this person thinks they're voices, crazy voices. That's not God, Kirsten. That's voices that you're having, It's like, okay. But if they speak through prophets, most of the prophets are dead, right? So God speaks only through dead people? I mean, it doesn't make any sense what she said. I mean, do you know?
No, but that's her belief.
Alive?
That's how she was. That's her belief. That's how she was brought up, and you're not going to change that.
No, I know. I knew that. That's why I kind of didn't. I didn't go on because I knew that we weren't gonna. I just kind of cut it off very gently.
Right.
I just said we disagree, and I will never believe that he only speaks through prophets. I mean, I don't believe that. I don't know a lot of other people that believe
a church probably taught her that because it's a way of disempowering us. That's what that is she's been disempowered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks. I just wanted to throw that out. I just wanted to see what you guys thought about that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And we do have to realize, because I've got some way conservative Christian relatives that I just won't even get into a conversation with them about religion. It's just
right. It just doesn't work.
Well, there's no point in it because my mind is made up.
Right.
Their minds are made up. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's the whole point of this last chapter. That's what God was saying. The only way those people will awaken is through the observation of those around us. When people see us make a mistake and then rise above it, admit it, and move on. When people see us forgive, when people see our hearts opening, they're going to judge us, but eventually, that's the thing. It's like, the tortoise and the hare, persistence. Eventually, they'll start to put it together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only through their own experience that they can awaken. It's not through anything that we can do or say to them. It's only what we can do and say for ourselves.
Right.
And it'll be through their observation of us.
And so we won't revisit that because, if I want to keep it from her, we won't revisit it because it's just a standstill and it's going to be that way, period. So I won't get into any, religious or conversation, like that. It'll just deal with it. It'll do a disservice to our relationship, friendship, whatever.
It's also a collective thing, right? She will encounter someone else with a little different frame of reference, and
maybe
the awakening.
Hopefully,
well,
that's the hope.
Well,
Well, they will. They will, because you can't unhear something.
Right.
You know, it's like,
and she's not going to forget it, and I'm
No.
not going to forget it. I'm not gonna
Shabana,
forget
were
that
you going to say
conversation.
something?
Yes, you can't unsee something. And when God was talking about beings in other realms who don't necessarily have to be physical, that they're having the experience of life without a body, but that they can materialize if they want to. As a Muslim, I grew up believing, that genies are real, like Aladdin and the magic lamp. And I didn't pay any attention to it because it's like, the Nicene Creed or whatever. You rattle it off and away you go. I mean, yeah, okay, sounds right. Everyone else believes it. Yep. So I had an experience that I could never unsee, because this very, very powerful landlady invited me to her house, and I looked at her, and she was not human. When I looked at her, like the woman was a different being, and I'm reverberating as I mention it. Like she had something else. Not exactly horror movie, but I looked at her through my spiritual eye and I thought, ay, 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 I can never unsee this one.
Right, exactly. The genie in the bottle.
Well, she was a genie. You see, there was a human being that had possessed her. And that's the way the monotheistic religions describe possession.
Right.
And then I started to notice her laughter and everything else. And I was in awe of this. Never thought I'd ever see it.
I've had experiences like that.
Pardon?
I've had experiences like that.
Well, I'm glad that you're sharing them here.
Similar. Similar.
I think we all have, and I think the important thing is, and thank you for sharing, Shabana, and it comes in on the positive and the negative, even though it's a spectrum. You drive by a horrific car accident, and you can't unsee that car accident.
Right.
Or you drive by and somebody's helping somebody else change a tire. You can't unsee that. And so if we're careful, not, paranoid, but if we're careful of what we allow ourselves to see and what we allow ourselves to say, and it doesn't mean you can't watch a scary movie, or, if you want to watch a scary movie, watch a scary movie. It's more of our behavior out in the real world, of letting somebody who's got a screaming child in front of you at the grocery store, and just being conscious and aware that there's all these things going on around us, and everybody's got their own stories happening. And we live in this world that's full of, and I'm one of the worst offenders, multitasking. And I think I'm getting all this more work done. Not so much. I just have 7 projects going at the same time, which takes 7 times as long to get them done. And when God said, you can get in your car and drive down the road and be doing everything that a good driver would do, but if you haven't set your attention about where you're going, you'll find yourself getting nowhere. And last week I was driving my son to work, and it's about a 40-minute drive. I got to his workplace, and I was so already ahead and not in the present moment that I was already back at my desk. I was already working, that I actually forgot to drop my son off before I turned around to go home.
Wow.
I know. And my son goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I guess I'm taking you home." But that's how I wasn't with that moment. And,
right.
And we can either
focus. That's what I always say. Focus. I always say, focus, Kirsten.
Yeah, but this, and the thing is, we can all make these mistakes, but it's like, I do this 5 days a week for my son. And just this one day, I was like, already turning around, and my son just looked at me. He was like, what are you doing? I said, "Guess you're not working today."
My mom always said that was daydreaming when she would do that. She would do that often. She said, "That's because I'm daydreaming about something."
Well, what we're doing is, and I read a quote yesterday or Friday about how there are 2 days I never concern myself with. And that's yesterday and tomorrow.
Right.
And that if we try to stay more present, I mean, it would solve so many issues. First of all, worrying, you can only keep to one day. You can only worry about today. Because we all know worrying doesn't pay the rent. Worrying doesn't prevent your kid from getting in trouble. Worrying, it's
waste of time.
It's a waste of time. And I've got a master's in worrying, believe me.
I got a master's in worrying. And creative writing.
But what I try to do, and I would hope everybody here would try to do, is obviously try to stay in the present moment as much as possible.
Yeah.
And it's not always possible for me, probably not always possible for any one of us. But I'm much better at catching myself. I might go down that little worry side road and go, "That's his journey, not my journey."
Right.
That's their journey, not my journey.
I try to do that with anger too. When I get angry, I try to only do it for a couple of hours, and I try to meditate. And I said, "This anger or worry is not going to do me any good. So just drop it." I can't just do something else to distract myself or do something else, because it does no good. It just gets into a tailspin and you just keep going. And it's just no good every time. So I've been training myself to do that, but it's hard. It's not easy. This isn't easy work. When you've been trained a certain way your whole life, to be different,
Yep.
But what was that quote? Who said that? Yesterday is today.
I'll look it up and put it on one of the Facebook pages. I can't remember who said it, because it was out of a hard copy. I've got a stack of quote books.
Yeah.
And it might have even been today.
Yeah. But yesterday is today. That was the quote. Well,
no, the quote was, "There's 2 days a year I just don't pay much attention to," and that's yesterday and tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay. Yeah.
Linda, were you going to say something?
Just the key piece of the being intentional. That's the part that is the awakening, is the remembering to be intentional.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree.
And you can be anywhere and be doing it intentionally.
Absolutely.
Like you can be washing the dishes. You can be washing.
Sorry.
That's okay. You can be doing what others might just call mundane work and be intentional. Alden?
Yeah, I was just going to say something's coming up that stems from intention, and it's so beautiful. I'm so looking forward to it. Do we have any more time to listen to Linda keep reading, or how are we?
3 minutes left.
Got 3 minutes. I don't think we should start a new chapter.
Yeah. Okay, how about playing with resonance and dissonance? That was such a perfect example that he came up with. There's a life lesson and even a lesson for some of the other presenters. And I listened to quite a few of them, right? And yeah, wow, to do the pitch right in the middle, wow.
Yeah.
And lose
But that's
listeners.
so typical. It's so typical. The thing that surprised me is that I went to a workshop with Ken Stone 3 years ago, and the same freaking thing happened, only it was in person. You know, with the first day of the workshop was beautiful. The second day of the workshop, the morning was beautiful. We came back in to the afternoon session. We get into this like beautiful place, and all of a sudden he starts pulling out the printed up sales sheets and starts pitching his thing. And he took so much heat then about that I was just so shocked on Sunday morning. And and I was just like, oh my God, I just have to hang up. But see, I'm in an intimate 4-person circle with him on Monday mornings. And so Monday morning, we got into it really deep. And, and he was just, and I can so relate to it because I'm insecure about marketing. I don't know anything about marketing other than what I've studied. And I know I don't resonate to anything any marketing person has ever told me. And it's probably why I'm where I am now and not somewhere else, because I've refused so much of what they've told me. And so to see this man who's so evolved get caught in that same limited thinking, and to see where the energy from the marketer was obviously so strong that he gave up his power and said, you must be right.
Wow.
In the putting together of this project, and then to get into the middle of it and to realize, no, I was right, he's wrong. And now I don't know how much Ken spent on that marketing guy, but it was thousands and thousands of dollars. And watching someone with that realization that, I just spent thousands of dollars to get what was bad advice. I mean, and then how do you process that? And watching him process that, it was all just so beautiful. I think that's why it happened, was for all of us to witness it.
Oh, maybe. Hey, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, and remember,
You're muted, Nanette.
Yeah, you're muted, Nanette.
I think it's a perfect way to look at it, because any given situation that's handed to us, no matter what it is, large or small, happy, sad, it has come to us for a reason. We've experienced it for a reason. And it just means we're supposed to get something out of that. And even if it's out of the good, the bad, or the ugly, if we can take away something and say, I'm going to work really hard not to do that, or I'm going to work really hard to do that, whatever it is. And it's ironic, as you said at the beginning, the resonance, because how ironic.
Right.
Sure. And
resonate with it. Yeah.
Conversation says that on the relative plane, on the physical plane, without the good, the bad, and the lukewarm, we have no frame of reference to understand and experience what the good, what the bad is. We're not talking about the absolute, where we're all pure bliss and pure love, which, by the way, we can all feel within our own hearts, because that is a God place, a God space within us. And Kirsten, that's where the energy for your friend that's caught up in a little bit more little self thinking, right? There's little self ego, and there's big self, where we're all one and such. So it's her feeling that unconditional love pouring from you and through you and in you, and we all know the source, our precious creator, right? Then that's going to be a major way to reach her too.
Well, that's what I was hoping. I didn't say that to her, though, of course, but I said, hopefully, I thought to myself, hopefully my bright light, my love for God and God loves me, will shine upon you. And because you know me, because I'm influencing you in some way, that you will turn around your thinking. But of course I did not say that to her.
Oh no, that's the sales pitch.
There you go. Hey,
Amen.
that's funny.
All right. Well, listen, everybody.
Knee slapper.
Knee slapper. Hey, I love you guys.
Love
And
you.
hopefully it'll be dry and I can show you my car window next week.
Oh yeah, good. Looking forward to
Good.
it.
Love everybody.
Bye.
Love you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.